On my wedding night, my husband left me for his mistress. The next day, his mother screamed at me, "You don't know how to please my son, so now you'll have to deal with it." But she turned pale when she found out what I did to her darling boy. They say your wedding night is supposed to be magical. For Chloe, it was the last time she ever believed in love. Chloe was 27 with a smile that seemed invincible. Her sweetness wasn't an act. She wasn't trained to please people. It just came naturally. She worked as a teacher at a community center and dreamed of having a family, a simple little house, and Sunday mornings with homemade pancakes and movies on the couch. She didn't ask for luxury. She asked for love, and she thought she had found it in Julian. Julian was everything a woman could want, at least on the surface. Well-dressed, a firm voice, a deep gaze, polite, charming. She met him at a charity fundraiser organized by one of her friends from the center. He had donated computers for the neighborhood kids. He said he loved to help, that he admired women like her. That night, Chloe went home with her heart racing, not because of what he had, but because of how he had made her feel important. And that's how it all began. Months of flowers, of letters, of candle-lit dinners. Chloe, who had no experience with men like him, thought she was living a fairy tale. She proudly introduced him to her family. Julian was charming to everyone, even her Aunt Carol, who always found flaws in her niece's boyfriends. Julian made her laugh. 8 months later, during a sunset picnic, he got down on one knee and asked her to marry him. Chloe trembled, not with fear, but with emotion. She said yes with tears in her eyes. The wedding was small but elegant. Julian insisted on covering all the expenses. She barely understood why there was such a rush, but she thought it was because he loved her so much. The flowers, the photographers, the guests in long dresses, it all seemed like something out of a romantic movie. And yet, there were details that felt off. Julian's mother, Diane, didn't look her in the eye throughout the entire ceremony. When she hugged Chloe, it felt like being touched by a block of ice. Beside her, Vanessa, Chloe's cousin, laughed with a knowing look at Julian. They hugged for longer than necessary. During the photo session, Vanessa even kissed him on the cheek a little too close to his mouth. Chloe wanted to believe it was just her own insecurity. She didn't have perfect curves or Vanessa's shine or the high heels worn by the other women in Julian's family. But he always told her he adored her naturalness, that it made her special. The reception was long, filled with speeches. Julian seemed happy. Chloe did too, though something inside her began to twist when she saw him checking his phone repeatedly. "Is everything okay?" she whispered, taking his arm. "Yes, my love. It's just work. But tonight is your night. Don't worry about a thing." The party lasted until almost 3 a.m. The guests began to leave. Amidst hugs and selfies, Chloe said goodbye to her parents with a lump in her throat. She wasn't just a daughter anymore. She was a wife. When they arrived at the hotel suite, she took off her heels, sighed, and hugged him from behind. Julian was standing there looking at his phone again. "I love you," she said in a soft voice. "I love you, too, honey, but I need to step out for a bit. There's an urgent issue with the suppliers in Chicago. I won't be long. Get in bed. Make yourself comfortable. I'll bring you something from the minibar if you want." She smiled, not understanding, but said nothing. Julian left. Chloe waited. Minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. She looked at the clock at 5 a.m. and felt a chill run through her body. She texted him. She called him. Nothing. She opened the curtains, hoping to see his figure crossing the parking lot. Nothing. The sun was beginning to rise and her wedding dress was still hanging on a chair, a silent witness to a broken promise. She showered, got dressed, and gathered her things in silence. As she left the hotel, the receptionist gave her a knowing smile. "Everything all right, Mrs. Thompson?" Yes, everything's fine." She lied. She didn't want anyone to know. Not yet. She got into a taxi and went straight to Julian's house. As she entered, she found the housekeeper cleaning the entryway floor. "Is Mr. Thompson here?" she asked, fine in confidence. "He went out last night. He hasn't come back. The lady of the house is upstairs having breakfast." Chloe went up. Her heart was pounding as if it would break through her ribs. Diane looked her up and down. Chloe hadn't slept. She had dark circles under her eyes. Her voice was trembling. "Good morning," she said, her voice cracking. "Diane, you still think you're part of this family?" the woman replied, not hiding her disdain. Chloe didn't understand. Julian didn't come back. He left in the middle of the night. He left me alone in the room. The woman set her cup down on the saucer with a sharp clink. Her eyes were like knives. "Anne, what did you expect? You're such a prude, so dull, so unsensual. Did you really think my son was going to stay with you after such a miserable night?" Chloe felt like she was going to faint. "What are you talking about? Oh, honey, you don't know the first thing about seducing a man. Did you really expect my son to fall for a woman who dresses like a grandmother and has no idea how to make a man desire her? You couldn't please him, so now you'll just have to live with it." Chloe swallowed hard. She wanted to respond, but she couldn't. "Get out. Don't make a fool of yourself. Don't ever set foot in this house again. It was embarrassing enough having you at our table. Where is Julian? With someone who actually knows how to treat him, someone who isn't a scared little girl or a rag doll." At that moment, Vanessa came down the stairs. Chloe looked at her. She was wearing a shirt Chloe recognized instantly. It was Julian's. Vanessa looked at her with an almost innocent smile. "I didn't know you were here," she said, as if it were some simple misunderstanding. Chloe left without a word. Her legs wouldn't support her. She went down the stairs as if the world had tilted backward. When she got to the street, the sun was already beating down hard. She sat at a bus stop alone with her wedding dress in a plastic bag. A little boy stared at her from the seat next to her. She tried to smile, but she couldn't. And just like that, in less than 24 hours, Chloe went from being a wife to being an inconvenience. But what Diane didn't know, what Vanessa didn't know, and especially what Julian didn't know, was that the woman they had just trampled on would one day be the one to bring them down. Chloe didn't cry at the bus stop. She didn't scream. She didn't break down like anyone else would have. In her place, she just sat still as if her body didn't know what to do. As if her soul had gone on a trip without telling her. She held the plastic bag containing her wedding dress with both hands, still smelling of perfume and disappointment. The wind blew with indifference. No one stopped. No one asked. She got on the bus with a handful of coins. The driver glanced at her. Anne. She avoided his gaze. She got off 2 stops before her destination. She didn't want her family to see her like this. Her mother had died 5 years ago. Her father had never been around. She had a distant aunt who lived on the outskirts of town, but she didn't even know if she was still alive. She decided to go to the house of an old childhood friend, Sarah, who lived alone and with whom she had lost touch. She rang the doorbell insistently, hoping something inside that house would light up. Sarah opened the door with a confused look on her face, but when she saw Chloe with her lifeless eyes in the white bag, she didn't ask questions. She just hugged her. "What happened?" she whispered. Chloe didn't answer. She just collapsed. For the first time since the night before, her body reacted. She doubled over. She cried from the depths of her chest as if her soul was being ripped out through her throat. Sarah didn't push. She let her in, made her some tea, lent her clothes, offered her bed. 3 days passed before Chloe could tell her everything, and when she did, Sarah was silent. She didn't know what to say. The story seemed like something out of a movie about betrayal and cruelty, but it wasn't fiction. It was her reality. "That guy," Sarah said with contained rage, "that guy is unforgivable. And your cousin, don't even get me started." Chloe didn't look at her. She was sitting by the window hugging a pillow. "He erased me. Julian blocked me from everything. Phone, social media, even email, as if I never existed." Sarah came closer, took her hand. "You're going to get through this, I swear." But the fall had only just begun. Chloe tried to ask a few acquaintances for help. None of them wanted to get involved. They were all connected in some way to Julian's family. They feared repercussions, scandals. Her world, as small as it was closing in on her. Quickly, her stay at Sarah's house couldn't last forever. Sarah was a nurse, worked double shifts, and lived paycheck to paycheck. Chloe didn't want to be a burden. She went out to look for a job. She dropped off resume at stores, coffee shops, daycare centers. No one called her back. After 2 weeks walking aimlessly, she saw a sign taped to a window. "Cleaning staff wanted. Night. Shift paid daily." The sign was at the entrance of a roadside motel. It wasn't the place Chloe had imagined for rebuilding her life, but at that moment, all she had was need. She went in. The manager looked her up and down. He didn't say anything about her clean clothes and innocent face. He just handed her a broom, a rag, and a bucket. "Got experience. I'm a fast learner. You start tonight. Room 6. The guest just left. It's a mess. Take gloves." Chloe nodded, pressing her lips together. She wasn't ready, but no one ever is when everything is taken from them. The first few nights were a direct blow to her dignity. She picked up strangers' underwear, stained sheets, empty bottles. She heard moans, fights, and dirty laughter through the walls. The smell of detergent wasn't enough to erase what she felt. During one of those shifts, while cleaning room 3, she stopped in front of the mirror. She didn't recognize herself. Her hair was tied back with an old rubber band. Her dark circles were pronounced. Her lips were chapped. There was nothing left of the bride, who just days before thought her life was about to begin. She then remembered the first time she saw Julian. He had arrived at the community center with a warm smile. He had kneeled to talk to the children. He told her he admired her dedication. "Women like you are worth their weight in gold," he had said, looking at her tenderly. She believed he meant it from the heart. Today, she knew the gold he was interested in wasn't in her soul. Weeks passed. Chloe collected her pay in cash every night and saved it in an old box Sarah had given her. She used just enough to eat. The rest she saved, not because she had a plan, but because she needed to feel that at least something was under her control. One afternoon, as she was leaving her shift, she ran into Vanessa. She was dressed like she had just stepped out of a magazine. Red heels, a tight dress, a designer handbag. Chloe recognized her from a distance. Vanessa saw her, too, and instead of crossing the street, she walked straight towards her. "Well, look who's alive. What a miracle." Chloe didn't respond. She just kept walking. "You work here? How interesting. I thought you'd be hiding in some corner, crying your eyes out like always." Chloe stopped, not out of fear, but out of contained rage. "What do you want?" Vanessa laughed. "Just saying hi." "You? No, between family. Although, after what you did, I don't even know if that counts." "What I did?" "Yes, trying to hold onto a man who was clearly not for you. I told you from the beginning, love isn't for everyone. Not for someone like you." Chloe took a deep breath, looked her in the eyes. "You were wrong about something." "And what's that?" "I didn't want to keep him. I wanted him to be happy, but it seems that didn't matter to him either." Vanessa let out a laugh. "Oh, Chloe, you're still so pathetic. How sweet. Take care of yourself. Try not to get any dirtier." She walked away laughing. Chloe didn't cry. Not this time. She kept walking, her posture straighter, more aware. Something inside her was beginning to change. Anger wasn't her enemy. It was her fire. The following weeks were quiet. Work Sarah routine. But inside her head, an idea was starting to grow. She didn't want revenge. She wanted to understand why. Why had they used her? Why did Julian's family despise her so much? What was behind it all? One night while scrubbing the bathroom in room 8, a guest came in. He apologized when he saw her. "Sorry, I thought it was already clean." Chloe stood up and smiled. "Don't worry, I'm just about finished." The man watched her in silence. He was in his late 50s, well-dressed. He seemed out of place among the usual clientele. "You've been working here long, a few weeks. You don't seem like you belong here. I can see it in your eyes. You're much more than this." Chloe lowered her head, uncomfortable. "I'm just trying to work." The man nodded. "That's good. Honest work, even when it hurts. Some people would rather steal someone's soul than earn a living." She looked at him, surprised. He smiled. "Forgive me if I was out of line. Sometimes you recognize pain when you've lived it." He left, leaving her with her heart racing. That sentence stayed with her. That night, after leaving the motel, Chloe didn't go straight to Sarah's. She walked, felt the air on her face. She stopped in front of a store window and looked at herself again. The same woman, the same face, but now with something new in her eyes. It wasn't just sadness anymore. There was something else, something she didn't even know she had. Strength. And without knowing it yet, she was beginning to wake up. From that night when a stranger told her she didn't belong in that place, Chloe was never the same again. The words hung in her memory like a song you don't know when you learned, but you never forget. She walked differently, observed differently, began to think differently. A few weeks later, she decided to quit her job at the motel. She had a little money saved up, not much, but enough to cover a few days of food and transportation. She felt that if she stayed there, her soul would eventually get used to the darkness, and that was something she couldn't allow. She had already lived too many breathless nights. One Monday morning, walking downtown, she found a flyer pinned to the door of a small building. Volunteers needed for community education programs. The place was humble with unpainted brick walls and a half-finished children's mural. The sign didn't offer money, but it offered something Chloe needed even more: purpose. She went in. She was greeted by a woman with a kind face, thick glasses, and her hair in a messy bun. "Hi, are you here about the ad?" she asked. Yes, I don't have formal experience with non-profits, but I was a teacher. I can help with classes or whatever you need." The woman looked at her intently. Her eyes seemed to see beyond the words. "You'll do well here. I can hear in your voice that you need a new beginning." Chloe smiled for the first time in a long time. She was assigned a group of children to help with reading and writing. They were young, many with absent fathers or mothers who worked in factories all day. She immersed herself in that world with all her heart. They painted, read, sang, and Chloe began to remember the woman she had been before the disaster. Little by little, she was recovering parts of herself she thought were destroyed. It was there in that center that she met Arthur, an elderly man, quiet with a slow walk but a lively gaze. He always sat in a corner reading thick law books and drinking chamomile tea. No one knew much about him. Some said he had been a judge. Others said he was just an eccentric old man who helped with the accounting. One afternoon, while Chloe was drawing with the children, he approached and left a book on her table. "For you? I read it when I was your age. It changed the way I thought." She picked it up. The title read, "The Power of Knowing Who You Are." "Thank you. I didn't know they still wrote things that could do that." "Of course they do. The hard part isn't reading them. The hard part is understanding them when you need them most." From then on, Arthur and Chloe began to talk frequently. He asked few questions, but when he did they were precise, not about what had happened but about what she felt now. "What do you do with your anger?" he asked her once. Chloe looked at him, surprised by the question. "I swallow it. Sometimes it chokes me, but I don't know what else to do with it." "Don't swallow it. Study it. Anger speaks too. It tells you where the truth lies." He started lending her books. History, basic law, emotional psychology. Chloe devoured them at first as a distraction, then out of a real hunger to understand. She felt that for the first time she was building something within herself that didn't depend on anyone else. And after so much abandonment, that was a new luxury. While her world was quietly mending, Julian's world moved on as if nothing had happened. She discovered it by accident, flipping through an old magazine in a clinic's waiting room. The cover hit her right in the chest. Entrepreneurs changing the country. Julian Thompson and Vanessa Miller, the couple revolutionizing the social investment sector. Chloe felt dizzy, took a deep breath, and turned the page. There they were, posing in front of a colorful mural surrounded by children, smiling as if they were the epitome of modern philanthropy. The article talked about a foundation called Future Horizon, created by both of them to promote rural education with private capital donations, government partnerships, and corporate support. The numbers were large, the impact even larger. But what made Chloe's heart nearly fall to the floor was a secondary image. Julian receiving a plaque of recognition at a formal event. He was wearing a black suit, a grey tie, and on his right hand was a gold ring with a green stone that Chloe remembered with absolute clarity. That ring wasn't his. It was her grandfather's, the only object that had disappeared when her mother died, a ring that was always said to have enormous sentimental value. Her grandfather, as her mother used to tell it, had been a secretive man with a story full of gaps. No one knew much about him except that he had vanished off the map when Chloe was 5. He left one night and never came back. No funeral, no inheritance, no trace. She stared at the image. Her hands were shaking. The past she had buried began to stir like an animal waking from a long sleep. She took the magazine with her, tucking it into her bag as if hiding a piece of evidence for something she couldn't yet explain. That same night, she went to see Arthur. They sat in the Scents courtyard under a dim lamp, the distant chirping of crickets breaking the silence. "Look at this," she said, showing him the picture. Arthur looked at it, then his eyes moved to the ring. His expression changed. "That ring? Are you sure?" "Completely. It was my grandfather's. I only saw it once. My mom kept it safe. She said he gave it to her before he left. It disappeared when she died." The old man said nothing for a few seconds. Then he stood up, went to his backpack, and took out a sealed envelope. He placed it on the table without a word. "I don't want to put ideas in your head, Chloe, but some things haven't added up for a while. This might sound strange, but your last name caught my attention the first day I saw you here. It seemed familiar. I looked it up and found this." Chloe opened the envelope with trembling hands. It was filled with papers, copies of records, fragments of unfinished wills, and a notarized report about an estate locked up in unresolved legal proceedings. On every document, her grandfather's name appeared, and so did hers, Chloe Reed Miller. "What is this? Your grandfather had a small fortune. He wasn't a tycoon, but he had assets, stocks, and properties. No one legally claimed them because he was never officially declared deceased. He disappeared. Yes, but legally he was still alive until a few months ago. And you appear as the sole heir because your mother was an only child. These documents are public record, but very few people know how to find them. And I found them because I had a suspicion. Chloe didn't understand. A suspicion? About what? Arthur looked at her seriously. That everything that happened to you was not a coincidence. She felt the ground open up beneath her. She leaned back in her chair and let the magazine fall onto the table. The ring glistened under the lamplight as if it knew it had been discovered. Are you saying that, Julian? I'm saying that perhaps he knew about this before you did, and that your marriage wasn't just for love. Chloe gritted her teeth. A tear traced a path down her cheek without permission. But she didn't cry. Not anymore. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because you didn't have the strength to hear the truth. Now you do. Chloe gathered the papers, putting them away carefully. Her heart was beating violently, not with pain, but with something new, a focused rage. She didn't sleep that night. She sat up reviewing every word in the documents, every name, every date. She realized her story had begun long before she understood she was in the middle of one. And though she didn't know how yet, she sensed that what she had just discovered was only the first page of the real book. Chloe didn't sleep that night. Every sheet, every line, every seal on the documents Arthur had given her became a claw mark on her naivety. Her mind replayed every scene from the past, searching for signs she hadn't wanted to see before. The way Julian had rushed her into marriage, his sudden kindness to her mother before she died, the seemingly innocent questions about her last name and her family. It all made a different kind of sense now. It hadn't been a mistake. It had been a move. The morning came without warning. The sky was grey. Chloe showed up at the community center as usual, her face washed and her shoulders straight. The children greeted her as if nothing had changed, but she was no longer the same. The silence of the previous night had made an incision in her soul, and something inside her had ignited. That afternoon, while organizing some books, Arthur approached with his usual cup of tea. You read everything, didn't you? He asked in a soft voice. Chloe nodded without looking up. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because you needed to find it on your own. If I had told you, you would have rejected it. Your heart was too wounded. And when you're bleeding on the inside, everything that comes in gets contaminated. Chloe closed the book she was holding. What else do you know about my grandfather? Arthur sat down next to her, looking out the window for a few moments before answering. I knew your grandfather from the courts. He was a quiet man, but observant. He didn't say much, but he listened a lot. When he disappeared, everyone thought he had run away because of debts or a terminal illness. But some of us thought there was something more to it. And what happened to his money? He moved it. He distributed it into accounts that were difficult to access. Legally, he left everything to his only daughter, your mother. But since nobody ever turned up and no death certificate was signed, his estate was left in legal limbo. Your mother never claimed anything. Maybe she didn't know, or maybe she didn't want to. And when she died, you became the direct heir, though no one ever officially informed you. Chloe looked at him in silence. The man who seemed like just an old book reader turned out to be the keeper of a truth that changed everything. Do you think Julian knew before I did? Arthur nodded. I'm almost certain he did. And he found out thanks to someone on the inside, someone who knew your story well. Chloe clenched her teeth. The image of Vanessa appeared in her mind like a shadow. Always so close, always so curious about her mother's history. The time she had jokingly asked if Chloe would ever get an inheritance. It was all taking shape. I have to prove it. I need to know how far they went. Do you have any way of getting a copy of your marriage certificate? Chloe hesitated. Then she remembered Laura, an old friend who worked at the county clerk's office. They hadn't spoken in years, but maybe she could help. That night, she sent her a short text. The next day, Laura replied with a call me. Chloe dialed the number with sweaty fingers. Chloe, oh my God, what a surprise. Are you okay? I need a favor. Something sensitive. Tell me, can you get me a copy of my marriage certificate to Julian Thompson? There was silence on the other end of the line with him. I thought you two were separated. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Laura cautiously agreed. She promised to have something in a few days. Chloe thanked her, her voice breaking. She hung up and sat still in the darkness, wondering how many more truths were waiting to be found. 3 days later, Laura met her at a coffee shop. She was nervous. She had a brown envelope in her hand. When she placed it on the table, her expression was serious. Chloe, what I found doesn't make any sense. Here's the marriage certificate, but there's also a divorce decree signed over 2 years ago. What? Your signature is on it. Julian's too. And a notary seal that says it was all validated at a city office. But did you sign this? Chloe took the document, read it calmly, her name, her social security number, the date, but the signature that wasn't hers. It looked the same, but it wasn't. She knew it the moment she saw it, and yet, there it was, stamped on a legal document. I never signed this, ever. He forged it. Laura looked at her with concern. This is serious, Chloe, very serious. Chloe put the papers away. In her chest, there was no sadness. There was fire. That night, she returned to the community center. Arthur was waiting with his cup of tea. When he saw her, he knew something had happened. What did you find? Chloe dropped the documents on the table. He forged my signature. He divorced me without telling me. It was all planned. The old man read the document carefully. His face showed no surprise, only resignation. This isn't just pain anymore, Chloe. This is fraud, and it's serious. She nodded, pressing her lips together. So, what do I do now? Now, we investigate more. Don't get ahead of yourself. They're confident. They make mistakes when they think they've won. Over the following weeks, Chloe and Arthur fell into a quiet, precise routine. They gathered documents, analyzed public account movements, and looked for names connected to the new foundation. Chloe was a fast learner. She read at night, took notes, made mind maps. The woman who once cried in silence was now becoming a meticulous investigator. The wound had transformed her. One Friday morning, while waiting in line at a coffee shop, she saw a TV program on the local screen that took her breath away. There were Julian and Vanessa, dressed in formal wear, walking a red carpet for the launch of a charity campaign. The host spoke with enthusiasm. The Future Horizon Foundation has successfully raised over $1 million for rural education. Its president, Vanessa Miller, and its founding partner, Julian Thompson, have established themselves as leaders in the philanthropic field. Chloe moved closer to the screen. In the image behind the podium was a banner with the foundation's logo, and just below it, in smaller letters, she read the words that made her tremble. A project powered by the Reed Miller legacy, her last names, both of them. She felt her soul leave her body. They had used her lineage. They hadn't just stolen her love. They had stolen her name, her history. They had turned her into a facade, a shield, to clean up their image. She felt violated, invaded. She took a deep breath, pulled out her phone, and took a picture of the screen. Later, at the center, she showed it to Arthur. They're using my name openly. The old man looked at it calmly. Then, he searched for a digital file in his folder. He opened it. It was a legal succession document. And there, like a final stab, was the proof. Chloe Reed Miller, direct heir. And just below it, another name appeared. Julian Thompson, active spouse, entitled to 50% of the estate. Chloe dropped the document on the table. She said nothing, just took a deep breath like someone holding back a storm inside their chest. What Chloe didn't know was that while she was discovering the truth, they were already preparing their next move. Because when love becomes a strategy, the soul becomes the prize. And Chloe was about to enter the most dangerous war of her life. The days following the document's revelation were filled with a dense silence. Chloe woke up each morning with a strange feeling, as if something in the air had changed. It wasn't just sadness or anger anymore. It was a contained energy, the beginning of a transformation she didn't even know how to name. At the community center, her routine continued. She taught the children, organized classes, and smiled at the mothers dropping off their kids. But at night, when everyone else was gone, she stayed with Arthur, reviewing more papers, analyzing names, dates, and signatures. That night, under the dim light of the cent's old desk, Arthur slid a different folder across. It was thinner, more delicate. "This is what you've been waiting for," he said bluntly. "The original file for the succession." Chloe swallowed hard, running her fingers along the edge of the folder before opening it. She did it carefully, as if the air itself might tear the documents. The first paper was a notarized deed. It stated in clear letters that her grandfather, Daniel Reed, had left a fortune divided among properties, investments, and deposits, hidden in trusts. None of it had been touched in over 20 years. What was shocking wasn't just the money, but the way it was all conditional. Arthur interrupted her before she got to the second page. "Read this part carefully. Your grandfather didn't leave a classic will. He left precise instructions. He knew that if he died without making everything clear, people would come for his assets. So, he set legal traps." "Chloe, read on." It said that the direct beneficiary of the estate once the owner's legal status was resolved would be his direct descendant, that is his daughter. But since her mother had passed away and had made no claim while alive, the second in line was Chloe. And here came the blow. The document specified that the legally active spouse of the beneficiary, if she were married, would have an automatic right to half of the assets if no prior waiver had been signed. Chloe closed her eyes, her heart pounding. They knew before I ever found out. Julian married me for this. Arthur nodded. And when he saw the inheritance was about to be activated, he made you legally disappear. Chloe felt a strange vertigo. It was as if her life had been split in two. The one before knowing this and the one now. Who else knew? That's the most delicate part. Arthur replied. I needed to be certain before I told you. I was discreet. I reviewed notary movements, transfers, the names of the lawyers involved, and I found something. Vanessa isn't just an accomplice. She is the co-legal administrator of the trust that Julian created 1 week after forging the divorce. Chloe froze. She didn't need any more proof. Her cousin, her blood, her childhood sister had signed her sentence. Her signature is on this. She posed as your legal representative. It seemed she signed a false authorization. She impersonated you. Chloe took a deep breath. She closed the folder. Her hands were shaking, but not with fear. It was an internal tremor, a sign that something inside her was breaking, never to be the same again. How much money is at stake? I can't give you an exact figure, but with the properties that are still active and the accumulated interest in some of the trusts, it's over $2 million. And that's not counting the appreciation of the rural land. Chloe fell silent. For years, she had lived with just enough. She ate thanks to Sarah. She slept on a borrowed couch. She cleaned motel to survive while they used her name, her blood, and her inheritance to pose for magazines. What if I report them? You have to. But first, we need to be smart. If you confront them without solid proof, they'll bury everything. They don't just have lawyers. They have power, connections, influence. Chloe stood up, pacing back and forth. So, what do I do? Just wait. Arthur gave a small smile. No, now we hunt them down, but with intelligence, not with rage. The days passed, and Chloe never stopped investigating. She visited notary offices, requested certified copies, and spoke with public officials, many of whom looked at her with pity or disbelief when she explained her case. Some, upon seeing Julian and Vanessa's names, made evasive excuses. Others pretended to know nothing. Everything was moving in the shadows. One night, Sarah, who was still letting her stay, came home with a serious expression. You have to see this, she said, placing her phone on the table. It was a video posted by a news channel. The anchor was announcing a gala event organized by the Future Horizon Foundation. In the background, Julian was giving a speech. Today we celebrate a decade of service, but above all we celebrate the legacy that gave birth to this mission. A legacy of hard work, of love for the community, of a vision for the future. A legacy that bore the name Reed Miller. Chloe clenched her fists. He had said it on camera. He had used her family name to build his empire. And, not only that, he spoke of love for the community while hiding a monumental lie. Sarah looked at her, not knowing what to say, but Chloe just stood up. I need proof. I need people to hear what he said, for him to say it in his own words, to sign it with his voice. The next day, she contacted a journalist, friend of Arthur's. Her name was Rebecca. She had an independent channel that did unfiltered investigations, and, though she wasn't famous, she had loyal followers. Chloe explained everything. Rebecca listened in silence. Do you have recordings, documents, names, dates? I have everything. I just need you to help me let the world know. Rebecca nodded. We'll do a special report, but not just that. We need a recording of him confessing or saying what you know, he said. Chloe thought for several seconds and then she remembered. Julian had always been arrogant. In the first few months of their marriage, he used to record voice memos for his business partners. He did it at home, sometimes in front of her. He thought those things were unimportant. She searched through her things in an old box where she had kept the few items she brought from their apartment. There, among papers and photos, she found an old USB drive. She plugged it in. Audio files, dates, names. She played one at random. Memo for Vanessa. Project activated. The contact at the notary signed without any issues. Chloe will never find out. The inheritance is ours. It was so easy. She didn't even notice. She married me with her eyes closed. Chloe froze. Her body vibrated. It wasn't fiction. It was him. His voice. His confession. Rebecca stared at her with wide eyes. With this we destroy them. Chloe said nothing. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she wasn't crying from sadness. She was crying for justice. This isn't over, she said with a firm voice. And it wouldn't be over because what Julian had stolen wasn't just money. He had stolen her right to trust, her right to feel loved, her past. But now Chloe was going for the future. There was no more room for pain or doubt. The tears had dried up what was once innocence. Now a different woman remained. A woman who no longer feared the fall because she had learned to get up with her hands full of truth. Arthur said it plainly. It was time to move. They had enough evidence to file a criminal lawsuit for document forgery, identity theft, and estate fraud. They had voice recordings, original papers compared with the doctored copies, dates, financial movements. Even Julian and Vanessa's public image could work against them because they had built everything using Chloe's family name without permission or legal backing. Every night they met at the community center, folders piled up like paper castles on an old table, but their contents were stronger than any brick. Sarah collaborated as a witness, and Rebecca, the journalist, prepared the most important report of her career. Meanwhile, Chloe prepared her soul for what was to come. The laws were slow, but the truth was not. During one of those long nights, Arthur looked at her in silence and said something that stuck with her. There's a moment in the lives of all who have been betrayed when they have to choose between crying for what they lost or fighting for what still belongs to them. Chloe had already made her choice. Through Rebecca, she managed to contact a legal rights organization that defended victims of estate fraud. After reviewing her case, they didn't hesitate to offer legal support and media coverage. Everything was in motion. All that was left was the final blow. But in the middle of the process, something unexpected happened. Sarah came to the center one day with a bewildered expression. I ran into Sandra, the old housekeeper from Julian's house. She told me something I'm not sure you should hear. Chloe stopped what she was doing. What? Julian's mother, Diane, is sick. Very sick. She has neurological problems, lives alone, and is abandoned. Chloe felt a bitter pang in her stomach. The woman who had humiliated her, who had thrown her out without mercy, who had called her useless for not knowing how to seduce her son, was now alone and sick. And Julian hasn't been to see her once in 3 months. Neither has Vanessa. It seems she's no longer useful to them. For hours, Chloe didn't say a word. But at the end of the day, she went to her closet, put on a grey jacket, and left, without saying where she was going. The address hadn't changed. The same enormous house with cold walls and a neglected garden. She rang the bell. No one answered. She pushed the door. It was ajar. She entered cautiously. The living room was the same grandfather clock, the same family portrait over the fireplace, but the air smelled stale. She went upstairs. On the second floor, she heard an old radio. She opened the door at the end of the hall. There was Diane sitting in a wheelchair with her grey roots showing, her skin pale, and her eyes empty. She was staring into space like someone who no longer expects anything. When she saw Chloe enter, she barely flinched. Chloe walked towards her with a steady pace, stood in front of her, and looked at her without hatred, only with truth. Do you remember me? The woman blinked, making a slight gesture with her head. The day after my wedding, you told me I wasn't good enough for your son, that I was a woman with no grace, no sensuality, that I had disappointed him for being too proper. Diane swallowed hard, tried to speak. Only a dry whisper came out. And now, Chloe continued, her tone unchanged. You're not good enough for him either. The woman closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. You were wrong about me. You underestimated me. You thought I would break. And I almost did, but it wasn't because of your words. It was because of the silence. The silence that you, your son, and your niece created to bury me alive. But you didn't count on one thing. I wasn't alone. The woman sobbed silently. It hurts to be abandoned. It hurts to be used and then ignored. Now you understand. And while I'm not happy about your condition, I'm not going to feign pity because you taught me something valuable. You taught me what I never want to become. Chloe turned on her heel. Before leaving, she paused at the door. I don't hate you, but don't ask me for mercy. I've already paid my price. Now it's your turn. She walked out of the house without looking back. That night, while Rebecca was editing the final report, Chloe prepared the folder she would deliver to the media. It was thick with certified copies, marked recordings, notarized transcriptions. Every page was a brick of truth. Every piece of evidence, a score settled. Julian's foundation had organized a special event at a national television station. It would be broadcast live. They were going to announce a new partnership with a multinational corporation to expand their project. It was all a facade, all a lie. Chloe would not miss this opportunity. Rebecca's team managed to coordinate a parallel interview to celebrate the success of Resilient Women, an excuse to get her into the same building where Julian would be. Everything had to be done with surgical precision. One wrong word and it would all fall apart. The day came. Chloe dressed in a simple white blouse and black pants. She combed her hair carefully and pinned on a small, butterfly-shaped brooch that had belonged to her mother. In her purse, she carried the folder. Her steps were firm, her gaze impenetrable. The TV station was a chaos of lights, cables and technicians running around. Rebecca met her at the entrance. Everything is set. You go on air in 15 minutes. In the next room. Chloe nodded. In the waiting area, she heard his voice. Julian was joking with the host. He was laughing. He sounded the same as always, but it didn't hurt anymore. It sounded hollow, fake, like an echo of someone who never existed. An assistant approached, Chloe Reed Miller, ready for Studio 2. She stood up, adjusted the strap of her purse, walked towards the door, and there he was, Julian in a blue suit, a measured smile, and a glass of champagne in his hand. When he saw her, his expression changed for a second, just long enough to confirm he wasn't expecting her. "Chloe, what surprise," she said, showing him the folder. "No, this was planned. But don't worry, this time, you weren't the one who wrote the script." He tried to maintain his composure. "What are you doing here?" "The same thing you are. I came to tell the truth, except mine doesn't need lights and makeup." He took a step towards her, tried to smile. "Chloe, can we talk? You've talked enough. I have everything. Your voice, your signatures, your lies, your inheritance disguised as charity." Julian's smile crumbled. "What do you want?" She looked at him calmly. "Justice, and you're going to get it in front of everyone. Just as you humiliated me, now it's your turn. But I won't use revenge. I'll use facts." The studio door opened. The host called for her. Chloe took a deep breath. "It's my turn." And she walked onto the set with the truth under her arm and dignity in her eyes. The studio lights didn't intimidate her, neither did the assistants rushing back and forth with headsets and clipboards as if everything was a perfectly timed choreography. Chloe walked straight to the armchair assigned to her opposite. Julian just across the coffee table that physically separated them. Though what truly divided them was far deeper, an abyss of deceit, greed, and betrayal. The show's host, a young woman with a sweet voice and a professional smile, greeted them both with a forced enthusiasm that seemed oblivious to the tension in the air. Julian feigned normally, adjusting his jacket, smiling, but his hands were sweating. His gaze avoided Chloe's. He knew she wouldn't be there without a powerful reason, and he suspected that reason could destroy him. The show began with the usual segments: theme music, guest introductions, flashes of pre-recorded clips. The studio audience applauded, unaware they were seconds away from witnessing a scandal that would bring everything to a halt. The host spoke first. "Tonight, we have a special edition. Two people who once shared a history, but who come today with two very different truths. Chloe Reed Miller, known for her volunteer work in rural communities, and Julian Thompson, businessman and philanthropist, renowned for his educational foundation." Chloe listened attentively, not with nerves, but with serenity, as if she were watching a scene she had awaited for years from the outside. "And Chloe, tell us what brings you to our show today." She took a deep breath, opened her purse, and took out the folder. She placed it carefully on her lap. Then she looked up. "What brings me here isn't a desire for fame or revenge. What brings me here is the need to reclaim what was stolen from me without my knowledge. What brings me here is the truth and my right to be heard after years of silence." Julian frowned. The host tried to maintain control. "Something was stolen from you, Chloe. My name, my inheritance, my dignity. I married this man believing in love. He abandoned me on our wedding night. Later, I discovered that abandonment was part of a plan. He married me because he knew I was the heir to a fortune I was unaware of. He forged my signature on a fraudulent divorce to take 50%. He used my family name to create a foundation with my money, and he did it all with the help of my cousin and his mother." There was an icy silence. The host blinked. She hadn't expected that answer. "Do you have proof?" Chloe nodded. She opened the folder, taking out the documents one by one. The original will, the signature comparison, the fake divorce decree, the authorization signed by Vanessa, the list of properties acquired in the foundation's name using her grandfather's trust. Then she took out a small recording device. "And I have his Voice. Listen. From the control room, Rebecca had everything coordinated. The audio played clearly through the studio speakers. Memo for Vanessa. Project activated. The contact at the notary. Signed without any issues. Chloe will never find out. The inheritance is ours. It was so easy. She didn't even notice. She married me with her eyes closed. Julian turned pale. The studio audience began to murmur. Some covered their mouths. The host turned to the production team looking for a signal. The broadcast, far from being cut, stayed on the air. Chloe seized the moment. For years, I worked cleaning bathrooms in motel while they traveled. First class. They used my family name as a brand to launder money disguised as charity. I didn't ask to be a part of this, but if I had done nothing, I would have been complicit in my own silence. Julian stood up. His voice trembled. This is a setup. All of this is a lie. That recording is manipulated. Chloe turned to him for the first time. Do you want me to play the other recordings, too? The ones where you mention how you got an official to sign the papers without my being present, or the one that talks about the bank accounts in the name of Future Horizon that are registered to Vanessa Miller with no tax declarations? Julian was speechless. The host, her smile gone, addressed the production team. Please confirm with the network's legal team if we should continue this broadcast. From the back of the set, the producer waved his hand. Continue. The scandal was already viral. Hundreds of messages were exploding on social media with screenshots of the exact moment Julian was exposed. At the end of the segment, Chloe handed the evidence to a prosecutor who was already waiting for her backstage. Hours later, the police froze the foundation's assets. The accounts were seized. Vanessa was summoned for questioning. Julian tried to flee the country but was arrested at the airport with false documents. Days later, the case was front-page news. Everyone wanted to know who the woman was who had faced an empire with just a folder, a recorder, and a clear gaze. Chloe didn't give interviews. She didn't seek fame. She didn't sell her story. She just wanted peace. She returned to the community center where the children hugged her as they always had. There, with Arthur's help, she established her own organization. She didn't use the Reed Miller name as a brand. She used a new one born from the heart, the Rebirth Foundation. She dedicated it to women who had been betrayed, defrauded, silenced. She taught them about laws, self-esteem, finances, rights. She spoke to them without victimhood, without resentment. She spoke from a healed scar. One morning, she received a letter with no return address. The envelope was plain white. Inside was a handwritten note. Thank you for not giving up. Your story saved us. I thought it was my fault that I was born to suffer. But after hearing you, I realized I can get out of here. Thank you for lifting me up when I didn't even believe I could do it myself. Chloe saved the letter in a wooden box alongside other similar messages. That corner of her small office was her real treasure. Days later, she visited Diane one last time. The woman could no longer speak. The light in her eyes had almost completely faded. Chloe sat in front of her, took her hand. She didn't say much. I didn't destroy you. I overcame you. That's something you never understood. That true victory isn't about sinking the other person. It's about keep walking without carrying their poison. The woman closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her gaunt face. Chloe stood up, kissed her on the forehead. Rest. It's all over now, and she left. Sometime later, during a group session at her foundation, surrounded by women smiling shyly, Chloe shared her story without tears. It no longer hurt. It was her engine, her banner. At the end of the talk, a young woman asked her, "And how did you manage not to give up?" Chloe smiled. "Because I wasn't born to stay down. I was born to lift others up." The imaginary camera would slowly pan out, showing the women sitting in a circle, some crying, others nodding, while Chloe stood, holding her gaze like someone who no longer fears life. And that was her true revenge. One that didn't scream, one that didn't destroy, one that only healed. What did you think of this story? There are many people like Chloe, fighting silent battles every day. Our hope is that her voice has resonated within you as well. If this story touched your heart, share it. Let more people feel that they are not alone. Be part of the change. Tell us in the comments what you would have done in her place and what city you're watching from. Reading your comments makes us feel closer to you. And if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Every gesture from you is a sign that these stories must continue to be told. Don't go just yet. Our next moving story is already appearing on your screen. Click on either of them and continue exploring this universe of real, moving, and necessary stories. Thank you for being here. Here, thank you for feeling with us. We're sending you a huge hug wherever you are. See you in the next.